It is slideshow. I think now it should work because I cannot see the screen. I cannot see the, okay, perfect. Good. Okay, so tonight I'm gonna talk about the missing framework to see but actually I really don't want to put this misinformation or misconcept here that now this missing framework, the endocannabinoid system, is gonna be a single magic bullet and it's gonna like explain everything about perimenopause, but it is a plausible and practical complementary system alongside with hormone system, alongside with all the different networks that is like regulating throughout the perimenopause. So like understanding and respecting that woman goes through this recalibration phase can help us move from finding a fix to supporting the whole set of like interacting and integrative networks that push all of these symptoms. So like always, tonight or this evening, our conversation gonna be about why, how, and what. Why is the endocannabinoid system central to perimenopause? How does the endocannabinoid system dysregulation explain the symptom clusters of perimenopause? And what does an endocannabinoid system aware approach look like? What can we do to support that system? And by that, let me start with a basically question that we actually never ask. And the question is that why do perimenopause symptoms always like mostly travel in groups? So we have like at the same time, we have mood disturbances, sleep disturbances, like vasomotor symptoms. And also the intensity of them is not is unpredictable. Actually, this question is the whole backbone of our presentation today, because we want to see what can basically connect all of these symptoms beside estrogen, because most of the conversation around perimenopause start and stop on estrogen. And yeah, of course, estrogen is playing a big role because we have all the estrogen receptor basically everywhere in the brain, in almost every organ, but it's not the only it's not the fix, it's not the magic bullet. A lot of systems in the body, they are working in a feedback loop, and in perimenopause all of them is changing, and like we have to find out what could be the mechanism, what is the system can bring all of them together. So the question is that why the first part is that why the endocannabinoid system is central to perimenopause. And like the short answer to that is it regulates the exact function these transition basically destabilize. As I was just saying, like close to 50% of perimenopausal women reports having trouble sleeping. Almost one third, like 30% of them, they have enough symptom to be diagnosed for a critical or clinical insomnia. Beside that, we have mood disorders, we have anxiety and depression, pain sensitivity increase in perimenopause transition, and that's the onset for many women for fibromyalgia. That's the onset of ADHD. I call it perimenopausal ADHD. And like all of that because of this restructure in the brain and restructure in the body. So here the question is that is there a system, could be a mechanism that bring all of those changes together? Can we find out what could be the root cause mechanism? Again, not as a bullet point, but as a complementary system. To answer that, I want to start with 3 anchor surveys, and these 3 surveys is about the use of cannabis on perimenopausal and menopausal women. Again, here I absolutely don't want to endorse cannabinoid-based medications. The whole point is something different that I come to it, but I had a point to choose cannabis-based studies here. So we see different surveys two from US, one from Canada. At the first one, the survey was on cannabis on women who were already using cannabis, and 79% of them report that they are using cannabis specifically for menopause-related symptoms. And then when they were asked what symptoms they target and why, and what they found helpful, they report sleep disturbances, mood and anxiety, libido, and sexual pleasure. Another study was like a little bit more general. The Menopause Society started a big survey over 5,000 women. And from these 5,000 women, 6% were actively using cannabis for menopause-related symptoms. Like around 40% they were cannabis users, but 6% were using cannabis to manage their perimenopause symptoms. And then the common reasons was chronic pain, anxiety, sleep, and stress. The third one is again a survey of over like 1,500 women between 35 to I think 45, 55 years old, and 75% of them, they were using cannabis for medical purposes, and 34% of them was current cannabis users for regulating medical management for perimenopause. And then common reason, again, sleep, anxiety, muscle, and joint pain. So what I want to say here is that, the question now is why basically why women are using cannabis, and basically what is in cannabis that can help simultaneously with pain and inflammation, mood and anxiety, and sleep disturbances. Because again, women are not using cannabis for random perimenopausal syndrome. They're basically using it to address these different clusters. And like the obvious answer to this question is that cannabis interact with the endocannabinoid system, and that's the reason why it could be helpful for all of this condition. But now the question is that what is basically endocannabinoid system? And here, before I go a little bit deeper to the endocannabinoid system, I just want to give a short story about how endocannabinoid system was discovered, because it's a relatively new discovered system, 35 years. So as we all know, cannabis has been used by humans for thousands of years. But until late 20th centuries, we had no idea how cannabis is functioning on a human body. We didn't have any information about the receptor mechanism of action. And the time that we find out basically cannabinoid receptors that interact with cannabis, it's almost the same time that we find out also what are the opioid receptors, dopamine receptors, like late 20th century. So in 1980s, and basically no one tell her name, that was a woman, scientist woman, Aline Howard, that she was working with her group to finding out the specific receptors for THC, and she found like high affinity sites in the brain of mice. And then after that, by 1988, they finally discovered the first cannabinoid receptor, and they call it CB1 receptor. So she was basically the lady behind finding out the whole system in the body. Of course, we parallel to that, we had Raphael Mechoulam that isolated THC from cannabis, like 20 years prior to discovering the endocannabinoid system. But basically, he is the one who get all the credits. But actually, that was like a joint work of many groups, and she was the one who discovered the cannabinoid receptor. And around 1992, after the CB1 receptor was discovered, the question became, okay, why we have a CB1 receptor, why we have a cannabinoid-based receptor. Obviously, it is not for cannabis. Obviously, our body has some molecule similar to THC or similar to like cannabinoid compounds that interact with this receptor. Otherwise, like biologically, it doesn't make sense. And that was, again, where the research pushed. And in 1992, Raphael Mishulam could like isolate the anandamide, first endocannabinoid that our body produce. Effect and like affinity to CB1 is very similar to THC. And because of that, they called it like anandamide, or in Sanskrit is bliss molecule. And then by mid 1990, there was another CB cannabinoid receptor was discovered, CB2 receptor, and then 2-AG. So little by little, like again, it's only around 30, 35 years that we discovered that whole system, the mycelium network, that has a regulatory effect almost in all organs. Almost in all organs. And that we have that because of understanding what a plant is doing in our body. So all the studies that I was like just mentioned about cannabis, it was not to like highlight the cannabis effect, but highlight to a system underlying the cannabis effect. And it's a system omnipresent in every organ, and it has a major regulatory and homeostasis work, and we are not considering it as medicine. We are not considering it in a woman health. So if you want to get a little bit more deep into the endocannabinoid system, like here is a nice visual that you can see how omnipresent and how widespread is this system. But if we go a little bit deeper into the mechanism, endocannabinoid system has three major components. We have receptors, CB1 receptor and CB2 receptor. As you saw in the in this picture, CB1 receptor is mainly on central nervous system, brain, spinal cord. It modulates pain, appetite, and many other processes that's related to the central nervous system. And then we have also CB2 receptor, mainly on the immune cell, and it's like responsible for the immune modulation and immune activity. Beside, like here, I highlighted the actions of sleep, inflammatory, and pain modulation. But beside that, endocannabinoid system also modulates mood and affect. It also modulates the whole cognitive clarity, also genitourinary processes. Is omnipresent in female reproductive health, and it's modulate our menstrual cycle, and also every step of the pregnancy. Every step of the pregnancy is the direct involvement of the endocannabinoid system. Also, we have endocannabinoid system, as you see here, in like guts and intestine, and it regulates mobility and permeability of the guts and intestine. So that's on receptor. Then we have endocannabinoids. We have anandamide and 2-AG. They are basically lipid signaling molecule in our endocannabinoid system, and they are produced in our body based on demand. For example, when we have pain or a stimuli is there, they are produced, and they are immediately like gets digested by enzyme like FAAH or Fa enzyme or Magel enzyme. So overall, then these, like the concept is that we have this triangle of endocannabinoid, receptor, and enzyme, and they work in a very closed feedback loop. They, as I said, their major role is that to make a balance and homeostasis in different organs in the system. And when this system is dysregulated, now we have a lot of studies that, okay, what happens when we have like we have not a regulated tonality of the endocannabinoids, like when the endocannabinoids are too high or too low, or the receptors cannot function properly. There is a hypothesis that many diseases could be related to that. The hypothesis is endocannabinoid system dysfunction or dysregulation. For example, we have studies on and that is only on women with major depressive disorder. They have endocannabinoid system dysfunction, and they have significantly lower amount of 2-AG in their serum. So again, when we look at IBS, fibromyalgia, migraine, we see all of this dysregulatory there. But at the moment, the data is not, is a lot of it is preclinical, early stages of clinical studies. And again, like it's only 5 years that we are concentrating to producing cannabinoid-based data, especially for women, like generally a little bit longer, but the focus on women health is not more than 5 years. So yes, so now that we know how does we know about the endocannabinoid dysregulation, let's go and find out how does the endocannabinoid system dysregulation explain the symptom clusters of perimenopause, and that's where the conversation gets interesting. So we know that in woman body, generally, like also in male, but that is more important in woman body, hormones and the endocannabinoid system are in a bi-directional dialogues. So hormones definitely, like especially estrogen, has a direct effect on ligand tone, to modifying receptor expression, and also the activity of the enzyme. Also, other way around, the endocannabinoid system had a feedback loop of the hypothalamus pituitary gland signaling. So it, as I said, it's regulate the menstrual cycle. It also influences the gonadotropin releasing hormone and luteinizing hormone output, and it shaped the whole reproductive tissue response. So bidirectional, very interesting here. I just put a kind of to visualize it. So at the top, you see the kind of estrogen and progesterone changes throughout the menstrual cycle. The pink one is estrogen. And we see that estrogen and anandamide has like almost a direct connection, because when estrogen level goes high, estrogen basically promote the production of anandamide, also reduce the activity of a Fa enzyme, and we have like more anandamide circulating in the body. And all of the women who track their cycles, they know around the ovulation, we are more happy, we have better mood, we are less sensitive to pain, and so on and so forth. And also estradiol change the signaling and effectiveness of CB1 receptor in some regions of the brain. Progesterone had kind of I cannot say directly positive, but kind of a opposite effect, because when progesterone is high, the activity of FFH enzymes goes higher, and the anandamide levels come lower. And that's actually, we need this this differentiation in anandamide level for a successful implantation of eggs. So again, that's like very important. Other way around, we know that, for example, the endocannabinoid system is a master brake in the brain. When anandamide level is so high, or we have high THC amounts in our body, the brain and the CB1 receptor is like overstimulated. They send this signal to the brain that please don't release gonadotropin, don't release like luteinizing hormone, don't release like FSH hormone, and like that, it's really regulate the whole menstrual cycle. And that's why it's very important. Women who want to get like actively want to like get pregnant or conceive, they should be very careful with the amount and the time of THC use, because we know that chronic THC use really has an effect on luteal phase. The luteal phase gets shorter, and also increase the number of ovulatory cycles. Okay, so actually, please have a look here. That's what happened in 1 month in a woman body. No wonder that we have at least 4 different characters in 1 month. And then when we change to the whole lifespan of a woman, we see that in reproductive years, we have these up and downs. We have these up and downs in hormone. And of course, we have these up and downs in the whole endocannabinoid system and how they modulate pain, mood, appetite, and so on and so forth. When the amount of eggs, because like all women, we are blessed with the 1 or 2 million reserved eggs, and then by puberty we have around like 400,000 available, and then each month we lose some of them. And when we go to perimenopausal year, we have this sharp, basically decrease in egg reservoir, and that's exactly why in perimenopause years we have this chaotic hormonal phase, because brain is the first organ to understand that something is going on. I'm not getting enough estrogen, because estrogen is mainly produced when the egg get fertilized from this follicle that have the eggs in it, and start to send signals that to produce more follicular stimulating hormones, and then the ovaries release suddenly more eggs, and then because of that, all of these let's say nice predictable rhythm become unpredictable. And as we see here, that how these changes can interact with the endocannabinoid system, now imagine how this chaotic phase interact with the endocannabinoid system function and tone. Yes. And with this in mind, now I just want to, that's actually a paper published 2024 or 2021. I cannot remember, but yes, 2024. The title was that "Not Feeling Like Myself in Perimenopause. What Does It Mean? Observations from the Woman Living Better Life Survey." That is very interesting, because the whole point of this study was that, okay, not feeling like myself should be one of the first symptoms of the perimenopause transition, because that's exactly what women feel. They don't know what's happening. Everything in the body is changing. They have anxiety, they have fatigue, they have brain fog, sexual symptom, volatile mood, more pain. And that was the whole discussion, that NFLM should be actually one of the symptoms, one of the legit symptoms of the perimenopause, because when women approached healthcare providers, gynecologists, and start talking about that, it's always like they come out with best case with some like antidepressant, sleep aids, without really going one level deeper and understand what's going on in the body. And this 63% is the number of women who reported not feeling like themselves at least half of the time in this transition phase. So now here again come the question, why all of that happened together? This not feeling like myself symptom before it gets to the extreme hot flashes, before it gets to extreme vaginal dryness, how can we address that? I bring fibromyalgia every time that I talk about perimenopause, because the diagnosis might be fibromyalgia, but it also could be the perimenopausal endocannabinoid system dysregulation. We just talked about how endocannabinoid system regulate pain, pain sensitivity, and we know that by fibromyalgia we have endocannabinoid system dysregulation, we have altered circulating endocannabinoids, we have altered CB1, CB2 signaling, and basically we know that improving endocannabinoid tone improve the fibromyalgia pain. And here I also brought two cannabinoid or cannabis-based studies, one systematic review, one a new crossover RCT, and of course the result was clear. Cannabinoid-based intervention was helpful not only on fibromyalgia pain, but the quality of life, their sleep, their anxiety, their daily activity, and so on and so forth. So now I want to get like one level deeper, and I have to say, all of the data that we are here in regard to perimenopause transition, endocannabinoid system dysregulation, most of them are preclinical studies. They are biomechanism studies. We have not single clinical study to go deep and give us a more clear picture, but the biochemical mechanism behind it is plausible because we know other than pain and other than circadian rhythm, other than mood regulation, endocannabinoid system, especially in perimenopause, can play a major role in obesity and metabolism. We know that CB1 signaling regulates appetite, reward eating, and insulin sensitivity. And we know that when the endocannabinoid system is overactive, like especially the CB1 stimulation is associated with abdominal obesity, insulin resistant, and more food intake. We know it from like everyone who had a contact with like high THC cannabis product. It's known as munchies. So that is like they are very like involved in obesity and metabolism. And then one of the most important related symptoms is bone and osteoporosis. Here the mechanism and the evidence is the most strong because again, we know CB1 and CB2 receptor and endocannabinoid system is involved in osteoblast and osteoclast of bones. And especially here, CB2 receptor activity can be very helpful by osteoporosis, and all the dietary supplement and everything that can activate the CB2 receptor can be beneficial. Then we have like cardiovascular and oxidative stress. Again, we know that endocannabinoid signaling modulate the vascular tone inflammation. And also by cancer, we also know that the endocannabinoid system is involved in several mechanisms of tumor biology. And there are like studies, again, like we don't have a clinical study, but there are preclinical and strong evidence that show, for example, for women, estrogen positive receptor breast cancer, a high THC extract and THC intervention can inhibit the proliferation and migration of the tumor cells. So we see that endocannabinoid system can be involved in many different aspects of perimenopause transition and menopause related disease. And why no one is taking this seriously, I have no answer. So I'm going to check the time. Sure, oh, perfect. We still have time. So now we know that, but what can we do about it? Because again, all what I said, we want to have an approach. We want to have something that is good for everyone. And again, as I mentioned, we have this system, we have this endocannabinoid receptor, we have this endocannabinoid system, not because of exogenous plants like cannabis and not because of like exogenous or phytocannabinoids, because we have a system inside. And every system that we have inside, we can work with it, we can balance it from within. And that's what we're going to talk about. So first is that especially for women and for healthcare providers, please, like, don't look at your symptoms individually. Look at them as a cluster, because the sleep disruption rarely come isolated. It's always with kind of chronic pain. It's always with like kind of inflammatory diseases. Mood has a direct effect with inflammation. There was a clinical study, like a randomized clinical control, that shows high curcumin capsules where I don't know, it was like better or yes, it was more effective than escitalopram by depression, because like inflammation directly changed the tonality of signaling in the brain. And so sometimes people are depressed because just they have a very, very high inflammatory state in their body. And that is also like what happens premenstrually. We have like most of the women have PMS or PMDD. And that is again because actually before menstruation and during menstruation, woman body is in a high inflammatory state. So, but how we can support the endocannabinoid system, and that's the most important slide, I would say. To be able to support the endocannabinoid system, actually, we should start with omega-3 to omega-6 ratio, or better like AA to EPA ratio. Because our endocannabinoid system, as I said, are lipid-based signaling molecule, and they are built from omega-3 and omega-6. Unfortunately, the Western diet, we have high omega-6 ratio. It's like 20 to 1, but the best ratio is like somewhere between 1 to 1 and 5 to 1. So to start, like before doing anything else, that is something that we should like get under control. And again, I explicitly put here that's the ratio of arachidonic acid and EPA, like omega-6 and arachidonic acid and EPA is more important than omega-3 to omega-6 ratio, because actually like you can get very good omega-3 supply from LA supply from seed, from vegetable oil, and so on and so forth. But the one that is absolutely pro-inflammatory is arachidonic acid, which come mostly from like meat and like processed food and stuff like that. So this ratio is a much better indicator of endocannabinoid system tone. And then, of course, to address the balance, we should start with endocannabinoid system relevant nutrients. As I said, high quality omega-3 fatty acids. It's very important that where you buy your omega-3 fatty acid, because oxidation is a big problem with omega-3. And when you have an oxidated omega-3 fatty acid, you are already taking something pro-inflammatory. And then, of course, like we know vitamins, like vitamin C, zinc, vitamin B, they are all supporting the endocannabinoid system. And the dietary pattern, like again, back to the obvious Mediterranean, a lot of like good polyphenol intake, good olive oil, virgin olive oil with lots of polyphenol. They are all like basically helping the tonality of the endocannabinoid system. Because if you have something that from the very beginning, from the basis, is not balanced, no matter how much exogenous cannabinoids, no matter how much like cannabinoid-based medication you're going to put in, it's not going to function. And like when we have a high inflammatory endocannabinoid system, we call it like a red endocannabinoid system. And then, of course, the next could be cannabimimetic plants and compounds, because not only cannabis is interacting with the endocannabinoid system. For example, terpenes like beta-caryophyllene from black pepper. It's one of the strongest CB2 agonists, and that's actually one of the interventions that I think it's very mechanistically plausible for osteoporosis, for like generally inflammation, especially for perimenopause years, for osteoporosis, because it acts directly with the CB2 receptors. We have like terpenes. We also have like alkylamides from echinacea. We all know that taking echinacea help the immune system, and the reason for that is that the alkylamide has a direct interaction again with CB2 receptors. We have cacao and other traditional plants. Cacao also have a very interesting mechanism. It's decreased activity of FA enzyme, and by that improve and increase the level of anandamide in the body. And then we also have a very interesting plant, kava kava. It interacts with CB1 receptors and so on and so forth, many of them. And then, of course, we have to do lifestyle interventions, because all the modern lifestyle, all of that is against the balance of the endocannabinoid system. We sit all the time, and that's actually a killer for endocannabinoid system. tonality and balance, because you definitely heard about the runner's high. So cardiovascular exercises, cardio exercises, running, all of that help the tonality of the endocannabinoid system. Of course, the obvious stress management and sleep, again, because cortisol negatively affects the whole endocannabinoid system tonality. And at the end, of course, we have the option of phytocannabinoids, the cannabinoids from cannabis plant, THC, CBD, many other minor cannabinoids. And like when we talk about women health and when we talk about like options for women, I always promote lower THC applications, and that's basically how we can support. But it's very important before starting like with phytocannabinoids, start with balancing up or like cleaning up the system, because then they can interact better with exogenous cannabinoids. So I come to perfect. We have enough time for question and answer. I have a newsletter, like the name is Recalibration, and the last issue was actually about that, about the role of endocannabinoid system in perimenopause transition. And I went to it a little bit like deeper. If you want, you can definitely read. And I just want to, like for the end parts, I want to read something from that newsletter, because and here is the quote: "I'm not saying that the endocannabinoid system explains everything. I'm saying if we have a framework that connects pain, mood, sleep, and stress, and it's safe to work with, it's worth trying. Now, not in 15 years. Every approach we now call the gold standard started at someone willing to test a good idea before all the evidences was in. With conditions that mostly affect women in midlife, we've been waiting for a long time, and some of us can afford to keep waiting." So yeah, that was basically the I come to the end, and just I wanted to say, because this subject is very new, is very complex, and each part I can go talk about it hours and hours. I decided to do I think one